are as of last week. We were, the only people we weren't paying were tutors, but we got the release from the state last week that we are now paying them. There was only 6 tutors we weren't paying because the state told us at that point they weren't sure, now we are. So we're paying.
The ones off grants. and stuff
Everyone.
we're paying.
Yeah, everyone's always been getting paid. The only people went were 6 tutors. We're live?
Yeah, you're live.
Thank you, great. Priscilla, are you on? Bob, why don't you take a roll?
You started?
Let's start a roll call.
All right, I'm gonna call until Priscilla gets here, I'll take the meeting over. I'm gonna call the meeting of Region 16 school to order. If we stand for the pledge, please.
Bob, do we have enough people for a quorum?
If we have one, I'll find a minute. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kelly's not working this, right?
Oh, she should be.
Yes, I am, I'm here.
You're here,
Hi,
okay.
Kelly.
You might have to call the roll then.
Christine Arnold. Here. Priscilla Fratella. Ben Catanzaro. Here. Eric Dye. Robert Dyer.
Here.
Ozzie Newjames.
Here.
Roxanne Valancourt. Robert Hiscock.
Yeah. I think I heard 5 yeses, right? All right, we have a quorum.
Yes.
Roxanne just joined in as well.
Rox, you're here?
Yes, I am.
Great, thanks, Rox. Eric Dye had sent me an email, his kids were not feeling well. He was a little concerned, so he probably will not be present tonight.
Okay, we'll go to the budget discussion. Is there any questions? Everyone got a new budget document?
Can I speak to
Yeah,
it, Bob?
and I'm gonna go to superintendent to explain a couple of changes in there.
Great. So we have the new document, we uploaded it, and I do want to apologize first. If you go to the very last page of your budget book, I had made an error. It should have said 2019-20 and then 2020-21 on the yellow page. So I made the correction, emailed it up, and we uploaded the form. So the budget book is basically the same with the exception of a couple small changes. As you know, we've been meeting administratively with district office administrators, school administrators, instructional leaders, and we have some concerns about assessing our elementary school, and even more concerns with our younger grades. 3rd through 5th, we feel very comfortable with. They've done a great job with the online, they're receptive, they're engaged. And it's not to say the kindergarten 1st and 2nd aren't, however, it's much more challenging to assess kids and for the kindergarten kids specifically to have that social and emotional growth, to have the basic academic foundation we want them to have so they're strong moving forward. So in discussions, we feel as an administrative team, Michelle Rayner, myself, Dr. McGeehan, Mrs. Merzak, Jeffrey Haddad, the administrators, that we'd like to put in the budget a certified teacher. It's a cost of $70,000, which means a proposed staffing, which was originally a reduction of $96,000, is gonna be more of a $26,000 reduction. And we'd like to do it for a transitional kindergarten, which would mean kids that come in, if we don't come to back to school, or we're not able to assess, we have a classroom in which some of our kids who need some skills, and that would be both for Beacon Falls kindergarten kids and Prospect kindergarten kids, whether it's they need to be in there for 2 or 3 months, or if they need to be in there for the year. We want to have the ability to have a transition plan for those kids who may not be getting what they want. Also working with Tony, we locked in our health insurance, which was 5% at 4.5%. So that's a 75% change since the last time we finalized, but now we're officially finalized with Blue Cross Anthem, and that'll cover the $70,000 cost of the transition. So I'd like to put that in the budget for next year. We'll still remain at a 0, and that page I put in a orange sheet so it has a different color. So for 6 years, I'm proposing to the Board of Ed that tonight during the course of the meeting, they set the rate for the budget at 0%, which is 6 years. We've actually, I went back tonight and spent some time, we have a 0.5% increase after 5 years. In my first year, we came in, I think it was a little anxious not knowing the budget, we came in at a 2% increase. Since then, we've had reductions or 0. So I'm very comfortable with this budget. I think it meets our needs. So I'd like to move forward with this. I did in my update ask some questions that Robert Dwyer and the board brought up, and I'll speak to it now and I'll speak to it again later. I spoke to our attorneys at Shipman and Goodwin, as well as Tony had called Casbo. And the answer was, you know, can we prepay for services? Will they carry over budgets this year? Is there gonna be some flexibility? Can we order things and bring them in later or pay for services? Their answer was no, you need to maintain status quo. Quote unquote, you cannot prepay long-term contracts or services or items that are not received on site, performed, or utilized in this budget year. There's been no executive order about carryover budgets at this time. If that information comes further, then you can make a change. So that's the update on where we are with the budget as far as services are concerned. That's really all I have for tonight. We uploaded the new form. If there's questions, please come forward with them, board members. But before that, Priscilla did call me earlier with a question about debt service. The question was, came from Tom Pratt in Beacon Falls, and his question was, if you have a savings of $1.1 million, how come it's not reflected in the debt service? Tony can speak to that, because it is reflected. Tony, can you speak to that before I get into any board member questions?
Absolutely. I'm not entirely sure what the premise of the question, where it came from, but I will tell you that in 2020, we had $2,961,669 in debt service, and the proposed budget for 2021 has $1,854,075 for debt service, which is a reduction of $1,107,594.
Tony, there was also another question, and I don't have the book in front of me, and I knew you'd be on the phone. Priscilla called my speakerphone, and unfortunately has not gotten through yet to this meeting call. Said that she saw a line item that had been $287,000, now it's up to $400,000. I don't know what that's about, and I don't have it in front of me. Can you take a glance to see what she may be referring to?
I will certainly take a look and see what I can find.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, I don't have any questions from the public, but do any board members have questions, or would you like us to speak to anything? Michelle Rayner's on the phone, the administrators are on the phone. Oh, excuse me for a minute. Priscilla, I'm gonna put you on speakerphone on my phone and just leave you on, okay? Oh, let's see if you're muted. We can't hear her.
If she, let me know, she's not joined through her Google account, so if she lets me know what the last two digits of the number she called in with are,
I'd like to apologize for a minute. Priscilla, what are the last two numbers that you called in from your phone?
Your phone number.
Your phone number. 26.
You're not in this call.
We don't have you in this call, Priscilla. I can leave you on speakerphone on my cell phone if that helps. Okay, so if you have something. Alright, so I'll keep you on my phone. We'll continue the meeting. If you have questions or input, please just speak to me and I'll transfer through the phone. I apologize for the inconvenience. No, but Priscilla, I have one question about the budget. Okay, go ahead. All right, are there questions from the board at this point?
I just have a question. This is Rob Dyer. I just have a question about the proposed transitional kindergarten position.
Yeah.
Could you just explain what the responsibilities would cover? Is that would not be, I guess, what's the impact on class sizes versus what we were presented the first budget packet? And also, that's not to offset any of the pre-K spots, correct? That's gonna be strictly for kindergarten kids?
Strictly kindergarten, but it may include kindergarten and first grade. It may be a K-1 ungraded class where we'd have some support systems in there to help kids that maybe had lost some skills or had fallen back a little bit, or may need a couple months, Robert, so that they could either be promoted or stay back and then move forward later. It will, if anything with class size, it'll reduce class sizes. Our concern is if we have 10 to 15 or even more kindergarten kids between Beacon Falls and Prospect, that without the last 50 days of school, socially, they may not have matured at the level that we want. We do have some young kindergarten kids and some young first graders, or they've fallen behind, or they regressed with some of their skills in math and reading, and we don't want to hold other kids back. We think the idea of a transitional kindergarten might be helpful. Now, If we do not need it, we won't hire someone. But because it's budget time, I wanna put it in the budget at this point, and I think it's something, you know, everyone's talking about how do you transition back? I think this is a way for us to ensure that our kids have what they need when they come forward. Does that answer your question, Robert?
It does, I agree with you also. My concern is, you know, do we need to look at also first grade to second grade? You know what I mean, like,
Well, this
why
would-
did you target specifically kindergarten to first grade?
Well, I think K1 is our younger kids where they may need the most support. I think in the older grades, we might be able to support them within a third, fourth, and a fifth grade classroom. Plus, research says it's better to retain before second grade than after. It's usually not as advantageous, so, you know, between making friends, between the second to third grade reading gap, we think that's the best year to do it. We also are concerned about our fifth graders going into sixth grade. I mean, I don't wanna jump the gun here, but we may have a problem with that group as well.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
No, thank you very much. Michelle Rayner, do you have anything you wanna contribute to that? Go ahead, Naz.
My question is just for the record.
Sorry, I was scrolling back and forth. No, I think you articulated that well, Michael. We are in a new land with distance learning, and I think we are very concerned about our transitional year students, specifically our early learners and our kids that are moving fifth to sixth grade, and then potentially our older students. But we really feel the emphasis needs to be with the early learners for the reasons that Michael stated.
And my question
Thank
is just for the record.
This is Nazi who's speaking.
That it's gonna be just basically for 1 year at this point.
That's all it is. It would be a one-year position, absolutely. It's not a long-term position. Ideally, if we had a retired teacher from Region 16, maybe Ms. Castro comes to mind, or one of our former teachers that might wanna come back for 1 year, that would be great. Maybe it's a part-time position, but I think we have to start thinking. It only came to me the other day, and excuse my ignorance, I naturally assumed that we were gonna have a summer school program, and I'm thinking that's what we're gonna beef up, have a couple more weeks, but now I'm hesitant or concerned that we may not have a summer school program to work on these skills. So this may be a moving target and a moving position.
Yeah, Bob Hiscox here. When Michael called me about it a few days ago, I fully supported it. It's our most vulnerable group of kids coming in, and if you lose them at the beginning, let them fall back at the beginning, you just play catch-up for years. When he presented the idea to me, I thought it was a great idea, and I'm very appreciative of the fact, and I hope parents are also, that you thought of it, that you guys thought of it, Michelle and Michael and the rest of the team here has the foresight to do it. It shows what kind of a staff we have with forward thinking on our programs. So I think it's a good add to the budget.
Are there any more questions from the board?
Can anybody hear me yet?
Yep. Oh, hey, hi Priscilla.
You know what I think of the system, okay?
All right, Priscilla, it's your meeting.
We only spoke 5 times a day for the last 5 days. I can't believe we had this much trouble talking. Might be karma.
Hey, what do you want from me? I've been here, nobody heard me until just now. Okay, so I understand the whole discussion from K to 1, but 1 to 2 is also very vulnerable. So how are you going to know if we need additional help in 1 to 2?
Well, this is a K1 ungraded, so it'll be a kindergarten going to first and a first going to second. We hopefully maybe have 2 groups in there depending on the numbers. We're still struggling, we're trying to figure out how we're gonna be able to assess these kids if we don't come back to school, and we're gonna start working on that right back when we get from April break. And Priscilla, I don't know if you heard, we have concerns about 5th graders or 6th graders, but we don't know how to
Right, I
tackle
heard
all
that,
of it
yeah.
at this point. So I'm still hoping maybe we catch a couple weeks in the summer where we can bring kids in, but if not, we may have to rethink our first month of school at the end of August to September. Maybe those first 2 to 4 weeks are a review of the previous year's information and make an assessment at that point. That's the other thing we thought about. We will come to the board with our suggestions and publicly in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
That's what I foresaw. This is Nazim, that basically the first 2 to 3 weeks of the school year, are almost gonna be a review basically of what was missed, refresher, and that kind of stuff, because, I mean, it's not easy for the kids, for the staff, for everybody.
I was a high school principal not too long ago, and I used to, one of the toughest subjects in high school was Algebra 2 and math. You did Algebra 1 as a freshman, a ninth grader, you did Geometry as a sophomore, you did Algebra 2 as a junior, so you skipped a year, so Algebra 2 was with chemistry. We spent 1 month in high school, math teachers, just teaching the final chapters of Algebra 1 before they went into Algebra 2, and it was such a correlation, I saw to myself, we may be doing that next year with our kids.
Yeah,
Which
definitely.
I'm fine with, if that's what they need, that's what we're gonna do. And kids are resilient and they're sponges, if they're engaged and there's rigor, they're gonna perform at the highest level. And they will catch up if there's some kids that regress. Good point on us. Anyone else?
Nothing from the public?
Nothing from the public, and if anyone from the public wants to email me or send questions, or Matt will stop at any point in the meeting and, I'll move forward with it. So at this point, Bob or Priscilla, if you wanna
All
move
right,
to minutes.
Priscilla, you wanna take over?
Nope, you go ahead.
Steve, thanks. All right, we're on to approval of the minutes from the April 1st, 2020 Special Board of Ed meeting. If I can get a motion to approve those minutes,
So moved.
a second?
I'll second, it's Nazir.
So Bob Hiscock, and you had Nazi second. Priscilla first, Nazi second. Just for
Thank
Kelly.
you.
And Kelly, can you correct that everyone's present, but Eric died?
Everybody but Eric, yeah.
Correct.
All right, any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Any town officials online?
Just the one question we answered for Tom Pratt, which was, I don't know, he must have looked at something, differently, so Tony tried to eloquently explain it. We were at 1.8 million, this year, which was a reduction of 1.1 million dollars in our debt service. So there is a reduction of, over $1 million in this year's debt service.
Okay, but can I clarify the other part of that?
Sure.
Okay, I have a terrible echo, but I
We hear
also
you,
catches
Priscilla,
up.
we hear you clearly.
Pardon?
We hear you clearly.
Okay, so on the actual interest bonds and notes for this year, it's $287,293 and change. For next year, it looks like it's $459,075. So what he was questioning is, why is it more than this year?
Tony?
Priscilla, I believe you're asking about the interest portion of the debt, if I'm not mistaken?
Right, the interest bonds and notes, yes.
So the
That line
reason
item.
why is that the state of Connecticut has offset our interest payments for Woodland in prior years. Also, anytime we have bad checks or anything like that that's written off, we put it into that interest account so that it hits both towns. So for example, last year, we had about, I want to say $27,000 in checks that were, 4 years old that no one had a claim to anymore or anything like that. So we moved that money to the A account and paid down debt service with it. And the reason we do debt service, as advised by both our attorneys and our auditors, is because it benefits both towns in that case.
So that means that this year, the reason that it's lower than it's going to be next year is because it was offset by the state.
It was offset by the state and by reclaimed funds that we reclaimed within the region. So they're from prior fiscal years, 2014, 2015, 2016, that we've closed the books on, that we've now received revenue because of, checks that came back to us and things like that. So being that the books have been closed for 14, 15, and 16, we can't go back and reopen those books at this point. So what we do is we pay down debt service with it because that lowers the liability to both towns in the long term.
Okay, thank you.
Good answer, Tony. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Priscilla.
All right, public comment, we will take, if any comes in, we'll take it at an appropriate time. We'll interrupt the meeting. You got a question there?
No, I haven't.
No, okay. All right, correspondence, you have the correspondence to revised budget calendar, which simply changed, it was a result of a motion we took last meeting.
Yep, Lori changed April 8th and April 22nd.
Treasurer's report for tonight.
Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't bring my Chromebook.
Here, it's
Oh,
right
you
here,
got it,
sir.
sorry.
Let me sign it. I have it.
The balance of the general fund as of today is $3,617,843.92. Tonight's invoices total $62,110.06. General fund $62,110.06. Federal and state grants, 0. Adult ed, other grants, athletic fund, 0. Capital, non-recurring, 0.
Okay, any questions of Nazim? All right, student reps, Emma or Galvin, either of you guys on? Anywhere?
We sent them the information, so I was
Yeah, okay.
hoping they popped on.
All right, well, listen, maybe we can get a report from them as to how they've dealt with the distant learning and everything at the next meeting. Exemplary people and programs, again, it's just the entire staff from the, top administration on through the entire staff that deserves a pat on the back for what they're doing. Superintendent's
can I-
report.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the parents and the community need to be recognized, for the efforts that they're putting in as well with the students at home.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Anything else? All right, moving on to superintendent's report.
The first is financial implications of school closures, transfer to contingency amount. In your packet, we're gonna be asking you to transfer some initial funds that we're starting to move. A lot of these are operations, some are services. There is one correction, the telephone 627 for 16,000, that was a savings from last year. Everything else is a result of unspent funds for closures. So we're looking to transfer 525,000. We're still working through a lot of our service contracts for special education, as well as some of our public and private tuition facilities and the bus company. So we're moving 500,000 now. We're hoping to move another 300,000 to 500,000 later to be conservative. So hopefully we're on that track for that $1 million that we talked about previously. Any questions on that before I move? Nazi did ask me before if everyone is getting paid, both with our general fund and with our grant money. The answer to that is yes. The state last week released the title money, and the federal government has always said from day one through IDA we were paying, so everyone is paid. As far as facilities, Steve sent us a terrific update today, and we signed our contract with Action Air for HVAC at Woodland. We're happy about that. Greenleaf has done some preliminary work. They're ready to get started. Contractors have started with repairs and renovation work up at Woodland. We started with the fields, with the landscaping. We removed some of the sidewalk already at the front entrance, and we're in full force with that. An identified staff has returned to work in small groups on a rotating basis for half days to start working on some of our outside facilities. We've had Valley Flooring come and replace some of the stair treads at Woodland and some of the classrooms at Long River, which we've been replacing 30 to 60 tiles a year in those rooms. So we started some of that work. Any question on facilities? Excuse me.
So basically, sorry, on HVAC, basically, they're gonna be full force as scheduled based on.
Absolutely, yep. We'll be full force, and we purchased those units, which is close to 200,000 in advance, and we signed contracts, so they'll be on site before the end of this budget year. We will pay for them. We moved that money a couple meetings ago.
Yeah, maybe something, I'm sure we will keep track of, just to make sure with the current situation, if there are any delays or anything, just to make sure it doesn't go into the September, August timeframe.
We're hoping
It's
not.
beyond our control.
We're-
at this
yeah,
point.
we're hoping not. I have heard some horror stories about contracting work where people I know have had big jobs and steel companies have shut down, or vendors for wiring. So unless we fall into something like that, we should be good. But there is always the possibility that one vendor can't get an item or ship, there's a shutdown as to what's going on. So it is an issue.
Yeah, because if that happens,
But
then that,
we have,
sorry,
sorry, go ahead now.
if that happens, then we need to be careful that when school starts, if the work is not completed, that they probably have to come in on weekends or whatever to make sure the classes or the school is not interrupted basically as they're doing the work.
We'll monitor that as time goes on, obviously. That's common. But, yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
So So kind of in the same vein as what Nazir was just talking about, do we have a estimated completion date from these two vendors, as far as when their work might be completed?
We're supposed to be done before the first week in August
Okay.
for Action Air.
So if we, the only thing that pops into my head here is if we end up, by some stroke of luck, back in June, are we gonna have significant disruption where it would cause an issue?
No. Almost all the work is on the roof, it's the rooftop. Once the units are dropped onto the roof, there's very minimal work inside with the exception of wiring. So there should be no inconvenience to what goes on inside, maybe some noise, and when they're doing stuff that would require noise, if we ran into trouble, we do that after school hours or on weekends.
Okay.
I think everybody understands the circumstances they're faced with, even the contractors, and people have been very flexible and understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you, you're welcome. As far as staffing updates, a reduction in forced letters and placement change were emailed and sent certified mail on Monday the 6th. Staff movement will be handled internally by building administrators. That has to be done by May, that's why we've moved forward with those timelines are still in effect. As far as school closure, I said this before, go ahead.
We've sent letters, reduction in force out.
Yes, it's all done, as part of the budget. It was in the budget packet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that's all right, it's in your budget packet that we went through some time
I
ago.
was thinking the rest of it, if there was something that we weren't informed of.
No additional items at all.
Okay.
I spoke to this before, but I'll repeat it again. I did contact our attorneys, and I think most superintendents are doing the same thing. There's about 40 of us that are on an email exchange a couple times a day where we're communicating, bouncing things off. Who's taking April break? What are you doing with this contract? What are you doing with grading? We've been sharing out a lot of information as well as CAPS, which is the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, CAVE. There's a nice networking going on. And I called Shipman and Goodwin, as did Cheshire and a few other towns. And as I said before, it was to maintain status quo. You cannot prepay long-term contract services or items that are not received on-site, performed, or utilized in this budget year. There has been no executive order about carryover budgets. I'm hoping they do give some carryovers, but they don't. With that being said, this board can always vote to add 1% into our capital non-recurring, which we have now, but that is gonna be used for the remaining amount for our HVAC units. Also, under school closure update, we identified about 600,000 in savings to date from closures. There's work in progress with service providers, contracts, and operating expenses. We think we'll realize close to $1 million in overage for next year, which will thus help reduce town payments at that point. And I think everyone has seen my most recent letter that went out to parents. After we entered our 4th week now, we've moved from our teachers, who are doing a great job, as Robert stated earlier, with working with kids and our families, and administrators. I don't wanna forget about them. They're doing an amazing job. They're available, they're accessible, they're a tremendous resource. But also, we've now brought into, going into our 4th week, Shelley McNulty, our Director of Special Services, and Sarah, our Assistant Director. Our paraprofessionals are now working with kids. Michelle Rayner's brought our interventionists. We're back doing tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. Our BTs are working with kids. Different staff is coming and supporting. So now we're moving more and more of our staff online. And I'm really proud to say our pupil personnel, our support services are engaged with families as well. So we have a complete group of resources available. Now, is it the same as working with kids one-on-one? Absolutely not. But we are doing the best we can to get kids back into intervention services. So that's kind of my update for today. Questions, concerns, suggestions? I'm open to anything.
Do we have any information on students who have been as yet unable to reach or get engaged in the distance learning process?
We had a number last week. I think that number's in half. I'll be honest, I haven't looked at that number this week, so I do not have an answer for that, Robert. At our April 22nd meeting, I'll get you an answer as to where we are with kids we haven't been able to reach.
Thank you.
You got it.
Michael, I have it in my report that you're also going to update the board on the conversations with All-Star.
Tony, I'll do that when you do your director's report.
Understood?
That's your
Okay,
second
any
item.
other questions of Michael of a general nature? All right, if not, we'll move to the action items. We need a motion to modify the grading policy under the district learning plan for Region 16 schools while closed due to the emergency health crisis. And that is the stuff that was sent in a memo from
So
the
moved.
administrative team.
Roxy, second?
Discussion.
May I add something to the discussion? I'm forwarding to the board now, Priscilla, I will drop this off tomorrow. I just received it a couple hours ago. The state of Connecticut has given recommendations, not guidelines. They basically say in everything they send out, this is what we suggest, however, it's completely up to the board to do what they want. And our grading policy, which we should go through a little bit for people that are watching, is directly online with the state is saying. It's, the fourth marking period is gonna be a pass-fail. It will not reduce a child's grade or hurt a grade unless they're not engaged and not participating. And that's what the state is suggesting we do, which is a pass-fail for the fourth marking period, which we will do. If a student passes, this is 6 through 12, they will get 100. If they fail, they will get a 55, but that only counts for 10% of their grade. So it's really gonna be based on students engaging, students communicating with their teachers, students performing to the best of their ability, and us being understandable and flexible. Now, of course, there'll be isolated incidents where parents may have concerns or reach out to me. What I will do at that point is connect them to guidance counselors, school administrators, and we'll make sure we work through those problems. So I'm really happy that the state just sent that out a couple hours before the board meeting. So we're online with what the state is recommending. And I really gotta tell you the truth, I didn't do this. This was done by the administrators. It was sent to me, I reviewed it. I gave a very minimal input, so I think it came from our staff, and I think it's an excellent policy. If you look at the middle school, the first and second marking periods will be weighted at 32% each, which is 64% total for the two. Third marking period is 26%, and the fourth marking period is 10%, because that's the pass-fail. High school is very similar, with 100 and a 55 for a pass-fail. As well as the elementary, we will not be giving out grades. Okay, but we will be looking at work performed for students for completion, and have they been providing feedback for continued progress with learning. We'll do differentiated feedback for families, participate during class lessons, for instance. Video chats is encouraged. Due to time constraints, we will have recordings for families to look at later with a more convenient time. And evaluation of work will not be based on grades, but for accountability of doing the work, improving it when you get feedback, so we can, make a decision for next year. As well as, if you look at the last bullet, if accountability measures are not met, summer school, we hope, or other means of making up lost learning opportunities will be considered for promotion or retention. Ultimate decision-making will take place. If a family is in disagreement, we'll have a meeting at district office and discuss it. I think it's a good policy, and it's in line with state. I apologize for jumping in after the motion, but I felt it was important to be heard.
I think what we need to do, obviously, is this has gotta go to the staff next.
Staff?
All the parents.
Yes, correct, but I wanted the board to approve it.
Right, I mean, it's a change of our policy, it's a former teacher, it's well done. When I got this, I looked at this, wow, some folks put some thought into this.
Smarter people than I did it, thank God.
And came up with a policy that is gonna be helpful to the staff as well, the direction we're giving them tonight. So if there are no further comments,
I have a question.
go
I
ahead.
just have a comment.
Go ahead.
Comment.
Priscilla, and then,
I just want to ask Michelle, does she feel secure with this?
Yes, Priscilla, I do. And I do
Okay.
because the administrative team, honestly, the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school, they all talked and really wanted to put in place what was best for students. And a situation, honestly, when looking at grading and how we're managing our distance learning, is to do no harm. And we believe that this policy will do that.
Department
Okay,
heads,
thank you.
department heads were involved, and leadership teams were involved as well.
you did a good job.
Nice.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just my question on the third marking period, whether it's in middle school or high school. Was it enough to take the 2 or 3 weeks that students did from home was it enough to hurt her grades enough to go that lower percentage?
Well, I think, Naz, the middle school had 2 weeks left. The high school, I think, was done with that marking period. They
They were
had
very
finished it that
close.
day.
Yeah,
They were
that's
5
why-
days away.
That's why I'm surprised that the third marking period is rated less than the first and the second. I thought the first 3 periods would have been equal.
That's not for, correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, and maybe I didn't
Yeah,
clarify. Not at the high school, that's only the
When
middle
we look
school.
at it, with real data, and so our kids, we had 11 days before the start of the next marking period out of 45 days with the new distance learning. And what happened, there was definitely a learning curve for some people, and we looked at it, and some students, they didn't engage full on right away. Really, that first week, some students were a little slow out of the box. After that, they were on, and I think students were that way because some students felt, we're gonna be out of school for a week or 2 weeks, then we'll be back, everything will be back to normal. So we had to really reach out to students and to parents and say, no, this is gonna be for a while. So looking at the percentages, we didn't, again, do no harm, we didn't wanna hurt any students. So that's why we backed off that percentage, we thought that was more fair.
If you go to the first page, Naz, and you look at the high school is 30 for the first and second, 10% for the midterm, third quarter's 20. The middle school's 26, and then 64. It's a little difference because of the situation. They really took the time to look at when kids came on, it was well thought out. Janine Murdy was involved and, you know, in charge of guidance at the high school, so I think, listen, I think we have to trust the people that are put in the positions of authority to make decisions in the best interest of our children, and I
Because
think
I
they've
mean,
done it.
Just, and this is more also for communication, for the high school where it says the third quarter is only 20%, where it says the less disruption of learning, the last 10 to 15 days. If we're talking that, you know, just from a communication and misunderstanding by anybody, that we only have a few days left in the marking period, some parents might see 10, 15 days and say it's not 10, 15 days. So maybe in the communication that we have to adjust that.
Well, when I send out the policy, I'll send it out, probably Sunday after break. And if people have questions, they can call specifically, but I'll give a narrative before we upload it, if we approve it tonight.
Are we concerned, this is Rob, sorry, are we concerned at all, about disincentivizing kids by weighting the fourth marking period, lower than the other three? Where kids just say, okay, it's not really worth all that much, so I'm gonna phone it in for the last one.
Right?
Are we worried about losing those particular kids?
Hey, Robert,
I think it comes down to motivation, and you're right. The studies show that the kids who would typically get a 95, even if a class goes to pass-fail or percentages change, will still get a 95. And kids who would typically get a 70 still get around the 70. So that's really what the research says. So we're hopeful that, you know, we continue, you know, with the distance learning with integrity, where we're reaching out to parents and students, and the teachers are spot on, and it just continues. But I understand what you're saying. It's a little bit of an unknown because we haven't hit this before.
my answer, Robert, is yes. We're always worried that the longer this goes on, it's harder to keep kids engaged and motivated. And once they know it's a pass-fail, you may see work that you would have expected to be performed at a higher level. However, I think this is the recommendation from the state. I think it's a fair policy. We also don't wanna hurt those kids that are different types of learners and aren't as good with the visual and the online learning platform as they are within the classroom. So I'm hoping it's a balance. You don't wanna see kids' grades get hurt because we're not there working with them one-on-one and engaging. It is a
I
concern.
agree,
It's definitely a concern.
All right, any other questions?
I agree. I would just hope that we follow that situation so that we don't lose those kids.
Ben C's got one question.
Go ahead, Ben C.
All right. If this policy is adopted, what's going to happen to the high school seniors? Are they going to, is there a likelihood that they're going to slack as they get ready for their colleges? Are their grades going to be affected? I mean, should we hold the high school students to a higher standard and have that program, have distance learning be a digital version of what they would experience if they were in class physically? And then the lower schools, they can go to a pass-fail
Our recommendation, Ben, is no. That's the recommendation from the state, that's our recommendation. Let's face it, seniors come April are just about done anyway. Once they hit the AP exams in May, that higher performing student really doesn't have class for 3 or 4 classes. There's talk in the state about kids that ended their senior year being released early. They've already allowed us to set the graduation date. I don't think so. You know there's the senior slide as it is. It's probably gonna be even worse this year for the kids that are in college. Robert said that, we agree to it. However, we're forced into a situation where we really can't say to kids, you're gonna get a hard, fast grade because of this is new and we haven't perfected it, or I don't think we can ensure that that's completely accurate, how to hold them that accountable. Down the road, maybe. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever have a snow day again with the ability to do remote learning, but for now, I think this is the only option we have, and it's gonna be supported by, I'd say, 90% of the 169 school districts in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, we'll go to it's been moved and seconded, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion, those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Action item 2, we need to set the budget rate for 2021 school year for presentation to the public via online at the 4/22/20 meeting. The budget amount, if we want to add it to that as part of the motion, would be $40,731,402. And that'll be included in that motion. If someone would make that?
This is Nazir, so moved.
Bob, what was that number? Can you repeat it? I'm sorry. Tony, just make sure it's the
Make sure I
correct
got that
number.
Yeah, it's the same as last year. $40,731,402.
Good. I just double checked it.
That's correct.
Yep, okay. Yeah, you wanna read that? That's the amount that we're gonna move to, presentation to the public and a vote on the 22nd. Nazir moved the motion. Is there a second?
So moved, Roxy?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the budget?
I just want to ask the question formally. There is nothing in this budget. I know we can't buy services, but there is nothing that we can buy out of this year's budget, this new budget, and have it in our buildings by June 30th this year.
At this point, we haven't found anything, but if we find something before April 22nd, which is 2 weeks, we definitely bring it to the board's attention and request the reduction, Priscilla. And Tony and I will work diligently at that.
Okay.
Just a quick question through the chair, if I can.
Go ahead.
If we do decide to, and I'm not suggesting that we do this, but just as a procedural matter, when would we have a discussion about moving 1% or allocating 1% towards capital non-recurring? Do we have to do that prior to setting anything for next year's budget, or is that something we could do on the fly later on?
You can do it on the fly.
We can do it later.
As long as
That's
it's,
something that we would do at the end of the year when we realize what we have left for surplus funds.
Right.
as well as, Robert, as long as we do it at a regular board meeting, it can't be a special meeting. If we put it on the agenda at a regular scheduled board meeting, we can make the decision at that point. And I'm
I
hoping.
just wanted to make sure it had no impact on this number that we were voting on now, that's all.
Yeah, correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, the procedure will be, we will open this budget for discussion at the April 22nd meeting. And then the board will then consider a formal motion to adopt the budget in this amount after listening to the public.
Correct.
If we were to have a tremendous output from the public to delete things, we could move in that direction. If we had tremendous input from the public to move in another direction, to increase the budget, we have the flexibility to do that. The difference this year is that the 8 of us will be making the decisions for the 2 towns. But the final figure, this is the figure we're moving forward, this figure can change. If Michael and Tony were to come to us and recommend a number of increases or pre-purchases to save some money for next year, we still have the ability to change that figure after input from the public on the 22nd.
Correct, as well as, and I hate to say this, I wish I didn't, but it's the truth, we can postpone it on the 22nd if we want and do it at our next first meeting in May. So this is just setting the rate and, you know, I think the next 3 weeks are gonna be very telling. So Bob, you're 100% accurate.
Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion, questions?
Can I ask one question? This is Lori.
Hi, Laura.
Yep.
Right, so Roxy made the motion, and who made the second?
Nazir?
Nazi made the first and Nazi made the second, Laura. Was it?
Nazi made the first.
I made the
Roxy
first.
Oh, okay, thank you, I wrote it wrong, thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, we good? All right, I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Those opposed? Motion carries, thank you. The next thing we need is a motion to transfer funds as it pertains to the school closure into contingency account. The amount of the transfer is $525,336, and you had a listing of the areas where the accounts where it's coming from. As we indicated earlier, most of that is due to the closure, and some of the money is actually due to regular savings. For example, a telephone is not necessarily a result of the closure. But the amount we're gonna move from the various accounts that are listed is $525,336. If
This is
someone would
Nazir.
make that motion.
This is Nazir, so moved.
second, Christine?
Questions or discussions? You all have the list in front of you. If any questions on any of those categories,
Just a comment.
go ahead.
Okay, I'm just not sure exactly why we need to do this right now. I would feel more comfortable doing this in 2 weeks, but I won't go against it, but I just think this could have waited 2 weeks.
I think there's gonna be another round of this in 2 weeks.
I understand, but then we would have done the figures per line. In other words, just doing this because it's this month, being that we are in such an influx of, you know, everything, I just thought it would be better to do it in 2 weeks when we had additional figures.
Okay, anybody else comments? All right, seeing none, I'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Those opposed? Any opposition? Okay, motion carries. Tony, your report, please.
I feel like most of my report has been touched on already, but I'm happy to recap. Last week on April 2nd, I participated in a conference call with Kathy Dempsey at CSDE, who informed us that state and federal grants would be fully funded and not prorated through the closure period, which is what prompted us to call back start paying tutors through the closure period. That was our area of hesitation there. I'm going to skip the second one, and superintendent's going to touch on it. And as we just discussed, we petitioned to move $525,336 to contingency tonight, most of which are from unspent funds through the end of the school year as a result of the closure, with the exception of telephone, which was just savings that we realized throughout the year. So with that, I will turn it over to the superintendent to discuss the situation with All-Star Transportation.
Thank you.
I have a question before.
Yep.
Just Tony, just a correction, you mentioned paying tutors, but it's paying from the grants, right, not tutors, just to have it correct for the record?
Correct.
Because you mentioned tutors, that's why I wanted to make sure.
Some of our tutors are paid out of title, Nazi.
Right, those, yeah, okay, but there are some tutors that are not, I just wanna make sure.
All right, for the record, we have tutors that are paid out of 2 funds. We have our tutors for our tiered intervention, I think there's 6 of them, are paid out of title funds. We were waiting on an answer. Everyone else was paid in full, which would be through IDA grants, which we paid peer professionals, BTs, and aides. So everyone's been paid, and now that we know tutors are getting paid, we're gonna put a place in for them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just wanna make sure for the record.
Okay. And
I'm gonna speak to item 2, and I just got a text from Steve Martoni, thank you, Steve, that, we're using all forms of, social media here, cell phones, all platforms. Steve just spoke to Actioneer. Train is still producing the units, so he's confident in completing by our substantial completion dates. He does not anticipate any problems. The gentleman that's running, his name is Vinny, and he spoke to Steve today, and Steve just texted me that we're all on it. As long as train doesn't shut down, we should have no problem with the Long River Middle School HVAC units. Item 2, I did speak to John Dufort twice from All Star. John said he's been working with this region for a very long time, and he wants to make sure when he comes forward with a number, it's the right number. He wants to be very confident in what he's telling us he needs for his expenses, and we'll get a number. So at this point, after speaking to him 2 times, 4 or 5 times with with Tony reaching out to him, we're gonna wait for Dufort to produce a number that they wanna begin negotiating. They know we're gonna be negotiating with them. We're gonna be generous, we want that up and running, and we want them to be the company. They've always been with us, they've been in this region for 30 years or more, I'm sure. So we're confident that's gonna happen, but I did speak with John twice, and we're waiting on him at this point. Employees were laid off by bus companies, and I don't think they plan on bringing them back regardless of who paid or don't pay. So that's where we are with the bus company.
All right.
That's that update. Thank
Did
you.
he give us
John.
a time?
No, he did not, Priscilla.
Any other
Is
questions?
this something that you will touch base with him on a weekly basis?
No, Priscilla, Tony spoke to him 4 times, I've emailed him once and spoke once, and I spoke to him 2 more times. I think we're at 8 or 9 times reaching out to them. At this point, we're gonna sit tight. If we don't hear him from May, then we'll speak to our attorneys, we'll make our own proposal with a letter, and I think that's where we'll go.
Okey-doke.
Okay, any other questions of Tony or Michael? All right, seeing none, old business, any old business, guys? New business? Anything you want on the agenda for the 22nd, because that is a regular board meeting, correct?
Yes.
Anything?
Do we have anything on the agenda for the regular board meeting regarding, updates on distance learning, feedback from the community, feedback from the teachers, feedback from the students?
We won't on the 22nd, Robert, because I think it's too soon and we have a week off. But May, the first week in May, I am sending a survey out to get input from kids and from parents to see how we're doing and if we need to revise anything going into the last 8 weeks.
Could we also include the staff in that survey, Michael, and if there's any suggestions that the board can act on to make life easier for the parents, staff, students, I think it'd be good for us to know about it.
I think we're gonna give 3 different surveys out, Robert, so that'll be fine. I don't think this is one where it's gonna be one survey to everyone.
No, that's fine.
Great.
Okay, anything else? Any other information items? Committee reports, you have the minutes from facilities and transportation from last week. Any comments on any other committees, school liaisons or anything?
I don't
Anything
think
for
they're
the
having
good of
any
the order?
meetings.
If not, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Who was that?
Rob, back.
Rob?
I'll second.
Nazi second, Kelly.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor, please say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, we are adjourned, thank you, people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Easter.